So we'd like to welcome all the retreatants here tonight and our broader Shivananda family who are watching online. And we would very much be happy to welcome our guest speaker tonight in Satsang, Dr. Dominique Cassidy. Many of you already know Dominique, and I've already spoken about her. But just to repeat for those who weren't able to come, Dominique, as I mentioned, has a very in-depth understanding of both Vedanta and of Buddhism. And those of you who heard the morning meditation talk on the first day, Swami Atmaswarupanandaji said, Swami Chidanandaji very rarely used the word must, but he did say, you must meditate. And the second thing that Swami Chidanandaji used to say, because there was only two musts, he says, you must understand your mind. So we're not going to get someone as qualified, I think, here to understand the mind as we are going to get with Dominique, because, as I mentioned, she's a psychiatrist, and so has a very deep understanding of the mind. And she also teaches meditation. She teaches meditation to spiritual seekers, but also to doctors and many others in the professional realm. So Dominique, we're so happy to have you, and we welcome you, and we are all looking forward to hearing you tonight. Oh, and Dominique is a beloved member of the Shivananda family also.
Hari Om everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Yes? Okay, good. Just so that I don't speak for 45 alone. So it's lovely to almost be with you. I'm so missing not being there, and I'm seeing beloved people here. And I can feel just the energy coming out of your eyes right now. So I know how blessed you are all to be there during this retreat. And I've got a little flavor of the retreat, just singing with you behind my camera during the beautiful bhajan with Marcus and Zen. Thank you so much. And it's been delightful to listen to the talks. I've listened to both your talks, Swamiji, today, all in one go. It was beautiful. So, as you mentioned, Swamiji, I got very inspired listening to all the talks about maybe pointing to one of the many domains that can be explored, and it is about how to work with our own mind. We have heard many times, and we could hear it probably more and more, that even though we have learned that everything is divine, that we are divine, we keep forgetting over and over that truth. And most of our spiritual journey is about remembering what we keep forgetting. And we have seen that there's many ways to help this remembrance of the divine nature that we are and that everything is. And one of the doorways is to just surrender, just to trust deeply the teachings, the scriptures, to trust our guru, to trust our own glimpses of the truth that we've had. So that's one important domain, but we have other domain. It would be to keep affirming the truth over and over for those of us who love to keep that knowledge close to our heart, and to keep at every context, every situation, just remind ourselves through a thought about the truth of our being. For some of us, it would be to do all of our actions without in any way holding to the fruit of those actions, to just do everything as an offering to the divine, from the divine, or to just do it with all our heart as a way to express our deepest dharma. So all of those beautiful ways that all the sages have given us to help us remember what we keep forgetting. And one of the doorway that I wanted to maybe explore together tonight is the doorway of working with our own mind. So when I speak of mind, because mind can be used in a very different way, depending on the tradition and actually depending on the speaker. So tonight, when I say mind, I mean thoughts and emotions and images. So everything, all the thoughts and emotions and images that happen in our mind, in ourself, in our psyche. This is how I'm calling mind tonight. I'm just clarifying for if there's any Buddhists where they would use mind in a very different way. And so we all have thoughts and we all have emotions, and I don't need to tell you that they are very disturbing and distracting at times. And what keeps really bugging me, I find it quite extraordinary, is that it creates a lot of suffering, right? I mean, this is my work. If the mind wasn't a source of suffering, I would have no work, but I will not lack any work, because since the beginning of humanity, our mind is a great tormentor. And we all know that. And so how can we work with that tormentor in a way that it helps us actually go back to remembrance? How can our mind can be itself a way to realization? So that's the question I would love to explore together. So what's very intriguing is that actually we have no idea what a thought is. You know, in science, in neuroscience, now we can look inside our brain and we can find so much, you know, so much things. We can tell where you activate a movement, where you activate, you know, we can really, we've dissected the brain in a very, very deep way. But we have never found what a thought is. Actually, science has not found what consciousness is, but that's to tell you how much science is lost in that domain. But if we just stay at the level of thoughts, we have no clue. We all have a mind constantly active. We've studied it for ages. This is my work as a psychiatrist, and I can tell you, we have no idea what a thought is. And that's quite intriguing, because our thoughts can be so hurtful to us and they're so close to us. And if we look for them, we don't find them. What we do know, and that's my only incursion into science for tonight, what we do know is that if you take anybody and you put them into a machine to look inside their brain in real time, and you ask them to do nothing specifically, you just tell them, you know, hang out there, we'll take a few pictures of your brain. What's going to happen is automatically the person will engage into what we call discursive thinking. And it's just random thoughts that you know very well. This constant blah blah inside our head that describes, that speaks of the past, that speaks of the future, that thinks of what we need to organize, the constant ongoing rambling movement of our mind. And so that we have found in the brain. We know the areas that are activating in the brain. And what's very interesting is we found that it's an activity by default. What I mean by that is that it's something that you need to stop it for it to stop. It's like if I have my eyes open, I need to close them to stop seeing, right? If my eyes are open, I'm going to see. If I don't have any hearing problem, by default, I'll hear the sounds. To not hear, I'll have to block my ears. It is the same for our thoughts. If you don't block them, they'll be there. It's an activity by default. And so we are condemned by evolution to have this rambling thinking process in our minds constantly. And that in and of itself is not a problem for the spiritual journey. It is well described that we don't need to have no thought in our mind to be free. Actually, thought can be a beautiful movement inside our mind and not be a distraction. But what's happening is that many of those thoughts are indeed distracting us from the remembrance of our true nature. And one way to call those thoughts, I really like it's an American spiritual teacher who spoke it like that. And I think it's very well said. He calls it Velcro thoughts. You know what a Velcro? You put two parts together and they get glued. They stick together, and then you have to. It takes an effort to take them back. So we all have Velcro thoughts. What I mean to say is we have a lot of thoughts in our mind, and most of them we don't really bother too much. For example, right now you might have some thoughts about the temperature in the room, or what is it that I'm saying, or maybe you're tired. The thoughts might be coming, and they might not necessarily have any impact at all. But some thoughts will. Some thoughts, as soon as they enter inside our consciousness, they get our attention. We focused on them. Suddenly, we disconnect from what's happening. We disconnect from, for example, our meditation, or from even listening to a teacher, because there's something that attracts us. So those are Velcro thoughts. And we all have some Velcro thoughts. And those thoughts are actually, or can become very much a limitation on our spiritual journey when there's too many of them and when they're too sticky. So you must always already have experience when we have something very challenging happening in our life. Oftentimes we tend to focus the attention on that. For example, if you walk out and you fall and you twist your ankle, all the attention will go on the ankle and on asking for help and to be brought to the hospital. Everything else, the rest of your life is gone, because it's about taking care of that ankle. And so it's the same with some of our thoughts. They have a very strong power of attraction. And as soon as they come, our attention gets trapped. Not only trapped, but then we start feeding them by getting involved into them. One of the images is that there's a train that walks by. There's many trains in a train station. And Velcro thoughts is the trains that you get into. You can have a thought, oh, it's a little cold tonight, and you let the train go by. But then there's a thought that comes that says, well, I don't like how he spoke to me yesterday. And then we jump in the train. That's true, I really didn't like it, and he shouldn't have said that. And then we get involved. And all those thoughts, those Velcro thoughts, those train that we get into, usually are a reinforcer as well as an expression of our ego. Those thoughts usually say something that is relevant to me or mine. And if we are not attentive to those thoughts, they will keep on come on our journey and distract us from our path. And the difficulty is that we can have great understanding on spiritual journey. We can have great experiences, glimpses that last for a few minutes, a few days, a few months of our true nature. We can have all of that. We can even start sharing about it and teach. And when those thoughts come, we'll get distracted. And it's not just distracted, we'll start acting upon them. That's one of the explanations on why there can be people with great wisdom, even great doctors, or great meditation or spiritual teachers. When you listen to them, there is a great depth, a great capacity to share something that is authentic. And then you hear that in their life, it's very disharmonious. They're attracted to gain money, fame, or sex, or act in a way that is very destructive. And so one way to understand that is that there still remains some of those part of the ego that has not been purified, and those Velcro thoughts that still attracts those people in creating suffering for themselves and for others. So it can be a very, very useful and beautiful journey to start actually questioning our own mind, to start as you just had mentioned, Swamiji, to start actually knowing our mind, not the mechanics of our mind, but what are the specific topics that all of us remain fragile about. And we'll do a meditation later on. I'll guide you into a process that is one of the way, very much inspired by both psychotherapy and Buddhist teaching, that is a way to work spiritually with those movements of our mind that still express the attachment and identification we have with our ego. And so to do that process, of course, if you're tired and you just like to rest, don't bother. But if you are inspired and ready, we'll all choose one of those Velcro thoughts that we have in our mind. So let me define a little bit what I mean. So if you look inside your own psyche and look for a type of thought to work in the meditation tonight, we could say that it would be tamasic, rajasic, and sattvic thoughts. Rajasic, tamasic, and sattvic Velcro thoughts. So tamasic Velcro thoughts would be all the thoughts that lead to a sense of depression, a sense of lack of motivation. It could be thoughts about difficulties in the past, fear of the future, unresolved issues. Think that when they come in your psyche, they bring your mind and they bring your heart down into heaviness, into darkness, unresolved momentum, and brings a sense of really strong heaviness in yourself. Now, rajasic Velcro thoughts would be thoughts that bring out tension and more energy, like thoughts that would bring up anger, or thoughts based on personal ambition, or wanting to be recognized a certain way, wanting to achieve something. All those thoughts that when they come and when we become distracted by them, they bring tension and energy in our system. And then sattvic thoughts, you all know them very well. They're all those thoughts that create a sense of harmony and love and quietness in our mind. So you might wonder, why would you want to work and free yourself from even sattvic thoughts? They're good, right? We love having sattvic thoughts. They're very pleasant. They create harmony inside ourselves, inside others. Can there be actually sattvic Velcro thoughts? And yes, this is a tricky domain, because we very easily can see that thoughts that lead to depression and anxiety, they're not good for us. We can also see that thought bringing more anger or strong ambition or strong desires, all of those also are not beneficial on the path. It's much harder to notice inside ourselves what are the subtle thoughts that we get attached to and identified with that are sattvic in essence, but that are also a limitation on our spiritual journey. And those would be thoughts like, for people serving, like I help others, I'm a good helper, I serve. It looks like a benign thought, but actually if we identify with it, it is directly connecting to a sense of personal and separate self, which is here again, in a very subtle way, distracting us from remembering our true unified presence as a whole. So even looking at sattvic thoughts and freeing ourselves from the attachment we have for them is part of the process. So if you would like to try a process, I'll let you think, maybe you already have found. I'll invite you to look for a thought that comes in your mind and it's distracting you. Now, to do this practice for tonight, I'll invite you to choose a thought that is not creating too much turmoil. So a thought that if you have something very intense happening in your life right now and there's a lot of emotions, it's going to be too hard to do what I'm inviting you to do. So to choose a thought more, annoying, distracting, creating some tension and disagreement, disbalance in your system, but not too strong. So I'll let you just a minute to think of a thought or a topic that's active. Maybe, you went to the market today and you got into an argument because, the bananas were too expensive, and, you got into a fight, something that level, something that it's not nice, but it's okay. So what we'll do now is we'll explore different stages in meditation. I'll explain them first, and then we'll do them on how we can specifically work with those type of thoughts when they arise in our mind. And so the first thing is to recognize, and that's actually the hardest, to recognize, to have the great integrity to admit that a type of thought, a type of habit in our mind is belonging to the ego, reinforcing the ego, getting the ego stronger, and that we're attached to it. So that's the first part. But now, since you've chosen one, we're assuming that you've already done that. The second stage, and I'll guide you into it, I'll just explain quickly. The second stage is we're going to spend a little bit of time to let those thoughts speak. We have a tendency, when there's a thought we don't like, to push it away. No. Especially if we've been on the spiritual journey for a long time. If we have a thought, an angry thought, or a jealousy thought, or a very judgmental thought, and we have learned that it's not good, it's not sattvic, then when it comes, it's not there. We push it away. So what we'll do in this meditation, we won't push it away, we'll invite it. So what, like a child who's screaming, like, what's going on? Why are you screaming? So we'll spend a little bit of time with this great capacity to listen with compassion to our mind. We're not judging on our mind. We're not beating up our mind. We're not at a war with our ego. We just want to keep remembering its non-existence, but it has a right to be there as long as it's not interfering. So we can listen to our ego, and we invite it to just say what it has to say, not because we believe it, but because we want its energy to be free, to be expressed, so that we can go into the third stage. And in the third stage, we'll let go. We'll completely let go our interest and our attention of the mind. We'll switch, and we'll go directly, which is the fourth stage. We'll let go completely of our identity, of all of the thought process, to dive back into the presence of awareness, or to get in touch with our divine nature. And that's the fourth stage. And then the final stage is from there, from this recognition of the divine nature of this moment and of everything that arises in it, from that place, we then will invite our mind again. We'll invite this negative thinking, so that we can see how, from the greatest perspective possible, from a realized perspective that affirms itself in the truth, no thought, regardless of its content, is actually a limitation of the truth, or anything else actually than the truth. So that's the whole program for this meditation, and something that we can then practice. It's probably very easy for all of you, or meditators and great sadhaks. So, but if you'd like, let's try to do a short 10-minute exploration of that, just so that you can see what it's about. So please sit down even more comfortably than what you are, so that you can signal through your posture that you are entering into a meditation. A sense of relaxation and dignity, and closing the eyes. And we'll directly go into welcoming a disturbing thought or a disturbing image, just to activate it a little bit in a very specific way. You don't need to solve it. You don't need to understand it. You don't need to judge it. It is just about welcoming it with kindness, as if it is the mind of a dear friend that is telling you how difficult it is. We want to be kind and welcoming and understanding. So you can do the same with that thought. Maybe the thought brings other thoughts, and then there is that, and then there is that, and you just let it speak. No interference, no judgment. What kind of emotions are arising? This practice requires actually courage because usually it is not pleasant. We do not like to feel sadness or anxiety or anger or jealousy or resentment. But here we take an act of faith and welcome it, welcome those uncomfortable emotions with the trust and the knowledge that it is actually divine. Everything is welcomed. And we'll go into the next direction now, and you can all take a deep breath. Exhale. And willingly let go now. Let go of that topic. Let go of that thought, that emotion, that image. And let yourself become lovingly disinterested. Lovingly because everything is based on an understanding that it is all divine, but firmly disinterested in whatever your mind is saying. And to engage into a movement of relaxing and resting into peace, let us just follow our breath for a few minutes. And specifically follow the exhalation. And with every exhalation, allow yourself to become more relaxed, as if the exhalation was gently pulling you downward into the depth of your heart. Into stillness. Into silence. With every exhale, allowing ourselves to rest more and more deeply into presence. Vast and luminous presence at the core of this moment and the center of your heart. And from there, now, invite again that disturbing thought or emotion. And go back and forth between that silent peace at the heart of yourself and the movement of the mind when it speaks of that issue. Go back and forth, visit one, visit the other. Back and forth until you see that you are neither going back nor forth. The texture of any challenge is exactly the same as the silence and the stillness of the divine presence. No difference, no separation, not two. And we'll gently come out of this practice by starting to breathe more deeply. And when you're ready to move a little bit and stretch if needed. So in this practice, we have done exactly what the Buddhists call transforming poisons into Buddhas, transforming the poisons of suffering and sorrow and all destructive outer and inner movement, transforming those poisons into the realization of truth. I hope the meditation wasn't too fast, the time wasn't very long, but in this process we start from our sorrow, our tension, our disharmony. We start from that raw material that creates so much suffering for ourselves and others. We start from there and then explore another relationship with it, which is a relationship of compassion and clarity. And then through that, drop into presence. And from there, I hope you were able to see that when we go back and forth, when we are deeply resting into the great stillness, when we lean then forward into then the madness of our mind, and then backward and forward and backward, and if we do it long enough and persistently enough, after a while there's a recognition that we haven't gone anywhere, that the great luminous presence at the heart of ourself is indeed manifesting itself as a movement that then calls itself me, my story, and the world. And so from this practice, we have transformed the poisons of separation into the Buddhas of realization. And the beauty of that is that we can take any of our, ego pattern, which I don't know for you, but for me, there's plenty of material to work with. And every day, go home after a busy day and look, how did this ego activate itself? And take it gently by the hand, like, oh, hold on, we're having some work to do together. You and I will travel back together to the realization that everything is divine, including you. And progressively, this process allows us to integrate more and more, so that less and less we experience this discrepancy between feeling very much at peace and filled with depth and understanding when we retreat or when we meditate, and then being suddenly thrown into the regular day-to-day life and finding ourselves acting in a way which is incongruent. So this practice is a way to slowly work this material so that there is more and more unification than in our day-to-day life. And from that perspective, when we ask the question, when bliss alone exists, how can there be sorrow? How can there be sorrow? Well, then the answer is that there isn't any. That practice allows to suddenly bring together what seems to be opposites as actually two sides of the same coin. And that's what I wish us all for our journey. And that's all I had to share for tonight. So I don't know if there was any questions or comments, or I think there's still another 2-3 minutes before I'm going to be cut off, if I remember the schedule correctly.
Does anybody have any questions they would like to ask?
I don't have a question, but I have something to say.
Yes.
So I don't have a question, but I want to confirm what you said at the end.
Oh, this one.
Okay, should I repeat? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I don't have a question. I just want to confirm what you said at the end of your talk. Like every day, we need, at the end of the day, we can go through our actions and activities and see where our ego was involved. Am I right? Did I understand correctly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Precisely, yes.
That's my takeaway from this talk. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, enjoy.
And a lot more.
It's a lovely process when we can actually look with impatience to see where our ego was, because we know that working with the pattern of our ego, we will be brought back to the divine nature. So it's actually a nice turn of event. Usually we don't like our ego. It makes a big mess in our life, in people's life. But in this practice, we're like, okay, where have you been? What have you done today? So yes, you have understood well.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Does anybody else have something they would like to ask or comment? Yes, please come.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you for the talk and for sharing your wisdom and experience with us. I don't know, like during these talks, also sometimes I remember this term spiritual bypassing. I know it's something that maybe is more from the West, but I wanted to hear your perspective on that, or if you want to share something about that, and maybe also its harms and how to be able to differentiate between, like pushing something away with spiritual concepts, or like not doing that and really uniting, let's say, the higher self with whatever is moving on the surface.
It's a very lovely, very beautiful question. Thank you. So yeah, spiritual bypass is another way to speak of what I was referring to when you can have great spiritual understanding, great knowledge, great even experiences, and still act in ways that are completely disharmonious. That is coming from, that's the impact of spiritual bypass. Spiritual bypass being using spiritual practices in a way that will just get rid of, momentarily get rid of patterns of the mind, but not resolve them. So we can learn, and that's a danger, or it can be a limitation on the journey. We can learn to be very good at completely bypassing our thoughts. And we can learn, like, when any thought comes, we let it go, we let it go, we let it go, we never address them. And we can gain a lot of freedom there just to do that. But some of those thoughts, if they come back and if we act on them outside of meditation, it means we have bypassed them. We are able in meditation, and when we are very clear in our mind, we're able to let them go by. But when we're more tired, when we have a challenge in our life, when something happens, then we get stuck in them, right? About being greedy. We can, in meditation, we can let go all of our greedy ideas about, I want this, I want to achieve that, I want to be seen like that. And then something happens and we're acting it. So if we are acting it, and especially if we're acting something over and over and over, it means it is a Velcro thought. We need to address it. Bypassing is not enough. So yeah, it is a challenge to notice, but it's really looking at what are the patterns of our mind that still are active in our day-to-day life and create suffering for us and for others. Those, we need to pause and look into them. It is not enough to just look at them and say, there's no self anyway, it is all unreal, I let it go. It is not enough to do that with thoughts if we're still act upon them. So that's one way to see, is how do we act. Later on, if we have some very negative, self-oriented, egotistical, judgmental thoughts, but we never act on them, they never come out of our mouth, they don't influence the way we respond to others and the choices we make, if they have no impact whatsoever in the form that our life is taking, then when they come, we can just transcend them. The thought comes, you look at it and you say, well, you're unreal. You're just a movement of awareness in awareness. You let it dissolve. That is fine to do as long as the thought then doesn't activate a behavior, a choice, a type of response in our day-to-day life. So I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, she has. Yes, she's answered your question. Yeah, yes, she has. You have, Dominique, thank you. There's another question. Yes. Another one's coming.
Great.
You can sit right there. Sit where the mic is and speak into the mic.
All right. So nice to see you.
Hello.
Hello,
Very
hello,
nice.
how are you?
Dominique.
So nice to see you, yeah.
Me too. Dominique, I was thinking one way of helping us is in our thought management is to go to the way we react emotionally, meaning we get a lot of bumps here and there, ups and downs. So if we learn, focus on how to respond to these challenges, like avoid resentment, avoid anger, avoid all these negative feelings. So what I mean is, if we focus on our reaction to the
ever-flowing, inflowing thoughts and actions that seem to threaten our emotional stability, our physical. When we interact with people, we get a lot of stress, and it can be hurtful. So if we learn how to respond without becoming resentful or negative or selfish, that will by itself enhance our ability to manage our thoughts and reach equilibrium, that we really want. That's all I wanted to say. Is this correct?
It is. It's opening into another whole realm that we haven't explored tonight, but there's many different ways to work with our Velcro thoughts. I've shared one, but one that you shared, yes, it's about specifically working with our negative patterns and transforming them. The Buddhists call it working with antidotes. So when you have a specific pattern of your mind, you're going to activate the exact opposite. For example, if you are very anxious, then each time a thought of anxiety comes, you're going to activate willingly a thought of trust. If you are jealous or resentful of somebody, you're going to activate a sense of friendship and care and love for that person. So that's another way to work your mind, to actually transform those negative, or it's like destructive thoughts, and to transform them into something positive. That will make our mind much more sattvic. But it's not necessarily liberating us from the identification with our sattvic mind. We can have full of beautiful thoughts in our mind and still be identified. And so that's when we also take those thoughts about those sattvic thoughts, that I'm such a good person, I do good work, there is meaning in my life, all those beautiful thoughts, and we also disidentify with them. But yes, thank you for bringing that up. It's a very part of the inner journey to transform our mind towards more and more sattvic expression.
I think if we learn to, what's the expression? Nip it in the nib.
Nip it in the bud.
Nip it in the
Bud.
nip it. If we control our reaction, not control, but channel it to be more positive, then much of our inner struggle will cease to be. Will not.
That's one. Yeah. Yes, and that's the beauty of the journey. There's so many tools. You can transform your thought into something more positive, or you can just see the inherently empty nature, the fact that there is real existence as is ourself or the ego, or that it is all divine. Let us use any tool we have.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for that one up.
Thank you. Thank you, Omar. Does anybody else have anything they would like to ask or comment? We see another hand. Please come. Yeah, please come. Oops, what happened?
What's going on?
Dominique, are you still there?
Yes?
Oh, okay. We've lost your image.
Oh. I'm still here.
Oh, okay. So actually, there's another lady who wants to ask something. So if you can hear her,
Sure.
and we can hear you.
I'm seeing you. I'm seeing everybody.
She can see us.
Yes, I can see you. Nothing has changed on
We
my
just
side.
can't see
Hello.
you.
Hi,
Okay.
Dom.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hi, good evening. Right, you were mentioning about the 3 steps when we were doing the practice. Remember the 3 steps that you were saying? Recognize, speak it, and then let go,
Yes.
right? So I'm actually referring on the second one, which is speak it, right? You said that if there's any emotions or any thoughts that comes into you, you say that it's speak it. So are you trying to say that we have to experience that instead of giving rejection to it.
Exactly. So
All
what I actually called it was listening with compassion. It's yes, you're absolutely right. What we tend to do is we tend to get rid very quickly of negative thoughts and emotions because they're not pleasant.
Yeah.
But because we are getting rid of them so quickly, they just wait in the back, and as soon as they can, they come back.
Yeah.
They wait. They wait for the opportunity for them to come back up. So in this practice,
Okay.
instead of pushing them away, we tell them, go ahead, tell me.
Yeah. So
And actually quite beautiful practice because we start to become friends with our own mind. Instead of being afraid of our mind, instead of wanting to get rid of what our mind is saying, we become a friend on our own mind.
Yeah.
And that relationship allows them to really then let it go. And then it doesn't come back. If you just push it away, it will come back. It's like a child that if you put a child in a closet, the child's going to bang at the door. But if you open the door, the child will scream for 5 minutes, and then the child will be quiet. So we want the child of our mind, all those nasty children and teenagers we have on our mind, we want them to speak, but we don't want them to take the whole space. It's a compassionate listening, just like, we say oftentimes that great saints, when they look at you, when they listen to you, they fully accept you, they fully love you, because they only see the divine. So that's how we look at our own minds. Whatever our mind says, that can be very ugly, very disturbing, very destructive, you listen to it from the perspective of the wise or the sage who is listening to you. You listen with love and care, and then you let go. It's a beautiful practice. If it doesn't talk, that's okay.
No.
But if you start to explore that, it creates a lot of freedom in our relationship with ourselves, where we stop being afraid of our own mind.
Correct. So which means that we have to completely experience it.
Yes, and it's not pleasant. It requires a lot of courage.
Yeah.
This is where the spiritual courage is needed, because it is not pleasant and it is scary. And it's not like you spend hours in it. It can take just 30 seconds. But if you've had anger today about a problem, then you just feel that anger. You feel you listen to the mind, and then you go ahead. But so it's the courage of welcoming the whole of our humanity. Inside our mind is great wisdom and horrible nightmares. We will welcome it all. We welcome it all because we know that in essence it is all divine. Yeah. But it requires a courage because we don't like that and rajas in ourselves. It's not pleasant, especially tamas. Yeah. And when we have the courage to sit with our very darkest, terrible thoughts in a way that is welcoming and loving, it completely transforms us. This is something I use a lot in therapy with my patients who are very depressed or very dark thoughts, or suicidal patients, or people who have been traumatized or abused. A big part of the teaching is to give them the courage to face what they have inside themselves so they can be free from it.
Yeah, you got it actually. That's the word I wanted to say, the traumatized part. Because when you talk about anger sometimes stays very short period of time. Some anger it stays very short period of time. But I'm talking about the traumatizing, sometimes the traumatized emotions, it's there in our lives for so many, I would say many years. So we have to completely experience it, and then we are completely ready to let it go then. Yeah.
Yes. But we have to go progressively.
Yes.
Tonight, I asked you to choose the topic that was very light. Yeah. When you are comfortable with welcoming small anger, then you increase to medium angers, then you go to big angers, and then you go to the worst anger. But you have to, it's like doing muscle practice. If you carry weight, you cannot take 50 kilo directly. You start with 1 kilo. Yes. So it's the same with your mind. Don't stop practice directly with the word trauma of your situation. It's too hard. You will be swirled away. Yeah. First start with little things and then build up. And yes, the day that any of us can sit in full trust, in full love, the darkest, most terrifying part of our mind, then we are from our mind. Yeah. Then we are healed.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Well, Dominique, by the questions and the interest, you can it really shows all of us how wonderful your talk was, how practical it was. And, you know, we all know all the problem is here in the mind. I mean, that's the really only big obstruction. And I just want to thank you so much for sharing what you shared tonight, and just how practical it is. I've always been amazed because I've not studied Buddhism, but you know, there are so many practical, beautiful teachings that can be really helpful to us, especially when it comes to the mind.
Yes.
So, thank you so much, Dominique. And
Thank you everybody. It's been lovely to be part of the retreat.
Yeah,
Wishing you.
Dominique will be here in January, if anybody
Yes,
still
I'm coming soon, but too late for the retreat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hari
Hari Om. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Hari Om.
Yeah. And thank you, all of you, also, for asking the questions. You know, it really enriches the talk when you ask the questions. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Oh, it's still on. Ah, wonderful. So Dominique would hear this also. She's good.
Thank you.